Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamenenchev with Tom Castleman here, and we are ready for a huge show. This is the last weekend without NFL football games. Forget this, the rest of the year. Are you kidding me, Tom? It's like heaven for sports fans like us. We'll have your full season preview, making our NFL picks. We'll go division by division. We'll pick the wild card teams out of the NFC, out of the AFC. I think we'll have a lot of similar division picks, but the wild cards, I feel like, will be a lot different. We'll also have our NFL MVP discussion, conference title games, and how about this? The big game itself. Big game itself. Tom, don't give it away to our listeners, but I'm pretty sure that I will be picking, I believe, the same Super Bowl I picked each of the last two seasons. So
probably
that is going to be interesting. And I'll tell you this, though, this year, I have less confidence in any Super Bowl picks I'm making. It is wide open in the NFL. I think we can both agree there is not one team that stands out. There's not one player that stands out for MVP. It's going to be very, very unpredictable, and that is how we like it.
Absolutely. Well, certainly you could look at just about any one of these divisions that we're going to be diving into as the show progresses and say, the team that wins this division will be able to will have a really good chance of winning the Super Bowl. You know, you can squint and see just about every division winner having a really, really good shot to win. Unlike some years where we've had, say, the 7-9 Seahawks who won the NFC West, that is definitely not the case with any of these divisions this year. I think the one place, and we'll begin the show here, where I'm going to slightly disagree with you, is MVP. Obviously, you can make a big case for a lot of different players, but if we're talking about, you know, now 2 years of proven high-end production, even more potential going into this season. I mean, we talked, you know, how many times about that Chiefs-Bills game, and we might come out with different quarterbacks from this one, but for me, I'm going with Josh Allen simply because he's shown now over 2 seasons that he has actually progressed greatly as a passer in terms of his completion percentage. Granted, a lot of that helps with Stephon Diggs, the Bills going out and acquiring him. But, you know, obviously Diggs is still there. Gabriel Davis is a young and up-and-coming player that a lot of people think is going to be able to sustain that. Not necessarily a number 1 and number 2 receiver, but I'm hearing some talk. You know, Peter King of NBC saying this is 1A and 1B. If Gabriel Davis can be almost to that similar level to Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen is going to have any number of weapons for throwing the football. And of course, he's always had the mobility, the speed, the size to be a good rushing quarterback. I think that for his long-term longevity, he's going to be focusing a little bit more on staying in the pocket. I think that's the wise decision, but he certainly can be a weapon in that sense, especially as you get within the 10-5-yard line. If he can get out on, say, like a naked bootleg or something like that, where yes, it's a rushing attempt, but he's not going to get hit. That's the sort of thing where I think Josh Allen's going to take off this year. So I think you can go any number of ways. I mean, pretty much quarterback is going to be, if Cooper Kupp can't win MVP after the season he had, basically we're talking about which quarterback do we think is going to have the best season. For me, my money is on Josh Allen.
And Tom, speaking of the quarterbacks, you know me, I'm a gambling guy. I'll give you some odds. Sure. This is according to PointsBet. Josh Allen plus 700 is the MVP favorite. Tom Brady plus 800. Patrick Mahomes plus 850. Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert plus 1,000. Then we got other quarterbacks: Burrow, Wilson, Stafford, Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. I mean, it's after those guys you finally get like Derrick Henry. So obviously, running back is not winning this MVP. A receiver, triple crown for Cooper Kupp last year, historic season, not winning MVP. It's going to go down to the quarterbacks. It's going to be a really good one. And I don't think there's one quarterback that is clearly above anyone else in this race right now. But one guy that I can say with pretty high confidence of the top dogs that will not win MVP, and we talk about this all the time, Tom, when you win multiple MVPs in a row, that third one in a row, you better break some records and have an all-time great season. So Aaron Rodgers will not win MVP this year. Devontae Adams is gone, and he's just not going to win 3 in a row. So it just doesn't happen in sports. Michael Jordan could have won 6 MVPs in a row. And guess what? He only won, what was it, 5 for his whole career, I think it was. So 5
Something
or
like
6. So I'm going to rule out Aaron Rodgers, throw him out the window. Justin Herbert, fantastic player. But if there's one guy that's getting a little bit too much hype, it's him. The guy hasn't played in the playoffs yet. Let's see him play in the playoffs first. You know I'm on the team game side, Tom, but still, for the MVP award, you got to have a lot of team success. Chargers will be good, but in that AFC West, I don't think they're making the playoffs. Herbert's not going to win enough games for MVP. Throw him out the window. Those are 2 of the favorites, 2 of the top 5. Burrow, Wilson, those guys have outside shots at the MVP. Stafford as well, health pending. But I'm going to say that those guys are going to fall short of the MVP. Lamar Jackson already won an MVP. He's going to fall short. He'd need a historic year for that. Kyler Murray, I'm not buying Kyler Murray stock anytime soon. And DeAndre Hopkins is out the beginning of the season. So that hot start he gets off to might be a little bit harder. So it's going to go down to 3 guys who I think have roughly even shots at the MVP. It's the top 3 favorites: Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. So the argument for Tom Brady would be that he has arguably the best weapons around him. He already led the league in passing yards last year. And Tom, you're a big fan of storylines. Obviously, swan song for Brady, MVP season. I actually thought he might win it last year because of that reason alone. Didn't win it last year. So Brady's got a shot with the weapons. And obviously, believe this or not, Tom, I think Brady is as good as he's ever been right now, which is crazy because I think for his career, he's a little bit overrated, but he's actually oddly a little bit underrated right now by some fans. Certainly not by the players because they voted him number 1 in the NFL, but Brady's got a shot. The other 2 are the 2 usual suspects you would think: Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen, for a lot of the things you listed, he is so good. He's got good weapons around him. He can pass, he can run. It's that sort of progression of he's been so good. Is this finally the MVP year? Josh Allen. Then there's Patrick Mahomes, who already has won an MVP, and he's got a lot to prove. Tyreek Hill is gone, but their team is not too far off where they were. Think about this. They added Juju Smith-Schuster. They got Sky Moore in the draft. They also added Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's a pretty solid receiver. And they still have Travis Kelce, Andy Reid. So they've got a lot of really good guys there. Mahomes is going to be fantastic. So those 3, any one of them winning would not surprise me. You probably know where I'm going to go. If it's so close, I got to go Homer. I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes here. As good as Josh Allen is, as good as Tom Brady is, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is just a little bit better as a player. The numbers. I always say them out there. Most pass yards per game in NFL history, best passer rating in NFL history. He can make plays and throws that no one else can. He's a fantastic leader, a fantastic player. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is going to come back and win the MVP. Think about this. Mahomes as an MVP underdog. Chiefs, granted, they've got a brutal schedule. They are the favorite, but there's it almost feels like, less than 50% of the country thinks they're going to win the West. There's a lot of people who think the Broncos will win. Some have the Raiders, some have the Chargers. When is the last time since Mahomes was quarterback that Kansas City was not the hands-down favorites in a division they've won 6 years in a row? They made the AFC Championship 4 years in a row. Mahomes as an underdog? Look what he did as an underdog when he went into the league. So Patty Ice wins MVP for me this year. He was also disrespected by the players. Wasn't even voted a top 5 player in the league this year. So look for Mahomes to win MVP.
Yeah, certainly going to be one of many compelling storylines. So compelling, I think we'll stick here as we get now into our divisional picks. Let's just begin with the AFC West. If for no other fact, then it is one of, if not the most compelling divisions that we're going to see. And I'm pushing aside NFC East. I know gets a lot of love because of that East Coast bias. Everybody loves talking Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, Commanders. But as far as the competition goes, I think we talked about this earlier this year in the offseason after the big Russell Wilson trade that this could be potentially the best, most deep, toughest division we've ever seen, at least from the quarterback position.
Yes.
Name a division that's ever had better quarterback play than what the AFC West has right now, which is why obviously, we can say, who our picks are going to be, but to be perfectly honest with you, I could see just about any team winning the division. That's how talented all these different teams are. They've all made win now moves. Raiders picking up Davante Adams, Broncos, obviously Russell Wilson, Chargers doing some things around the edges, picking up Khalil Mack to try to, shore up their pass rush a little bit. If anything, the team that didn't make any big, massive moves is the Kansas City Chiefs. So, comment, I know where you're going to be going on this one. Why do you think the Chiefs are going to win the division over all these other talented teams that have made addition moves, whereas the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill, arguably the most, one of the most important players on their team?
Third most important. I will say, as good as Tyreek Hill is, Mahomes number one, obviously Travis Kelce is better. If there was one that they were going to get rid of, I'd rather have Kelce than get Hill. But that's just
I'd say Hill's two on the team.
Okay, fair. So here, first off, Tom, I do want to say this. I'm high on the Chiefs. I've been high on the Chiefs before they even won the Super Bowl. I've been on this bandwagon because I was in Missouri as a TV sports reporter. I anchored a lot of Chief highlights. I've been to some games. Call me biased, but that team is so good. I will preface by saying this. I am less confident in the Chiefs this year than any other year going over the last few years, both in the division race and in the Super Bowl race, because it is wide open. I completely agree. Any one of these four teams could win the division. Davante Adams with Derek Carr, that's that proven chemistry. They were quarterback and receiver in college, set all sorts of records. Russell Wilson, Broncos a quarterback away. That's what we've known. Chargers, their issue was the defense. They added J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack. So every team in the division has gotten better. The Chiefs, some could argue, have gotten a little worse. Again, I'm not sure how much worse, though, because, yes, they lost Hill, but they did add some other receivers. So it's one of those where it's like their overall depth is better. Their star power may not be quite as good. What matters? Because I do think that depth matters, as we saw in the Super Bowl a couple years ago against the Bucs. The Chiefs have greatly upgraded their offensive line, both last year and this year. So that line keeps getting better. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was hurt most of last year. I know he played more than half the games, but pretty banged up the whole year. So that's another addition that we don't even think about. So I'm torn. It's going to be close. I'm torn between second, third, and fourth. But the Chiefs have been so far ahead of the rest of the division. I mean, just how much worse did they get and how much better did these other teams get? Because Chiefs have won 6 straight. They've dominated the division games. They were 12-5 last year. Raiders were 10-7. Chargers 9-8. Broncos 7-10. Did these teams really get 3 games better? Did the Chiefs get 2 games worse? Because that's a pretty drastic change we're talking about. I know that all these teams did improve, Tom, but we're talking like 1 or 2 pieces. It's not like they overhauled the entire roster. I mean, there are 22 guys that play out there at once. So 1 or 2 guys, yes, they can make a big difference, but can they really flip the records that much? I don't think so. I still think the Chiefs have the best player in the league in Mahomes. They have arguably the best coach in the league in Andy Reid, certainly top 2 or 3. They've got probably the best tight end in the league, Travis Kelce. So I still think they have the pieces to win this division. I think it's going to be tough for like a team like the Broncos, especially. Like that's who I actually have finishing second. I'm giving away wild card picks, but the Chiefs have owned the Broncos so much. It's like you're getting Russell Wilson, but that matchup, we've seen it over and over and over. And it's like every time the Chiefs are winning. And those other teams like Raiders and Chargers, similar deal. They've had a little bit more luck than the Broncos, but it's like Kansas City just owns these guys. And Mahomes and Reid, smart football minds, Travis Kelce, like they know these teams really well. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs to win the division. But I do think second through fourth is wide open. And if someone else won it, it would not shock me. I'll say that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as far as like the divisions go, I mean, you laid out a lot of great points for the Chiefs. Certainly, really no wrong answers here for me. Um, I know the Broncos, quarterback away and everything like that. To be perfectly honest, I don't know if I really trust the receiving core all that much. Like I look at their receivers, I compare them to Kansas City. After the Tyreek Hill downgrade, and to my mind is kind of like about even. And so that's why I am ready to have my heart broken yet again. I'm going with the Chargers. I really like Brandon Staley as a
Oh my
coach.
gosh.
I really like the additions that they've made on defense to help their pass rush out, to help their back end out as far as the back four safety, cornerbacks, and everything. They have proven weapons on the offensive side, perhaps like on par with what Kansas City has. I know Kelsey is better than any individual that the Chargers have, but you go, Eckler, Allen, and Williams. You've got a troika of great offensive weapons for Justin Herbert. So I think that this is the type of season where it might be it's kind of challenging saying it's the Chargers' time or whatever, but I
Oh
like
my
their schedule a
gosh.
little bit better than the Chiefs. I think basically all these teams are going to beat up on each other in division, but I think Chargers have a slightly easier schedule than the Chiefs do. So I'm going to go with the LA Chargers over the Chiefs. Don't worry,
Just
I have the Chiefs in the playoffs. Don't
okay,
worry.
just to play devil's advocate. And again, we both
Sure.
said this, so I'll say this again. I think all four teams have a shot to both win the division and the Super Bowl. But I actually, Tom,
Mhm.
have the Chargers getting last in the division of those four
Really?
teams. Last in the division. I think they're getting too much love. These guys didn't make the playoffs last year. They added Khalil Mack, they added JC Jackson, but their defense, this is the reason why I've got the Chargers getting last in the division.
Mhm.
Two great players does not make an entire defense. I know they got Bosa too. Okay, you got three good ones. Asante Samuel Jr., a young player, but there's just 11 guys are out there on the defense. 11 guys. This team was bottom 5 defense across the NFL last year. Like I agree with you, the Chargers offensive weapons fairly on par with the Chiefs. I don't know that they have the same coaches, and obviously as good as Herbert is, Mahomes is better. So I'm still going to say the Chiefs offense is a little bit better, but I can get what you're saying as far as weapons. But it's actually ironically the reason why I like the Chiefs over the Chargers is defense. That is what I'm going with. It is harder for guys to get set in a new setting. Those new defensive guys obviously got to learn the schemes, etc. Russell Wilson, same deal with his receivers. It's going to be a good test to see just how good are Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. How much
Mhm.
of it was it Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater? How much of it was that are these guys really as good as we think they are? So that'll be another thing to think about. Again, though, first year to gel with those guys, it'll be tough. My thought is that the Chargers are going to charge. The Chargers have had great talent over the years. I mean, Rivers,
Sure.
Tomlinson, and Gates. That Chargers team should have, frankly, won a Super Bowl at some point. I know Tom Brady and company kept them from doing it, but they didn't make a single Super Bowl appearance. I believe they had, don't quote me on this, but I think it was just one lone AFC championship. So it's just
Mhm.
like talent has been there. They had the talent last year. I know they upgraded the defense, but talent wise, last year, Chargers should have been better than the Raiders, should have made the playoffs, and they chargered in just very Charger fashion. Could have gotten a tie and made it. They messed up the clock. I do agree the coach is good. You can't make
Mhm.
a coach by one mistake. Matt LaFleur with the Packers, same deal the year before, made a mistake, but he's obviously a good coach. However, it's just Chargers going to Charger. That's all I'm going to say. I do not trust the Chargers when it comes to them, whether they're in San Diego or LA. You got to prove it to me first before I can
Mhm.
pick you real fast. My order of finish: Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers.
Yeah, I was
Who do
this
you have?
close to going. I was close to going Broncos just because I kind of like the narrative of worst to first, and I
You
think the
love the
AFC West
narrative.
is one of the best. But for me, I'm going to go Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, and then Raiders, and last in that order.
And
So
Raiders, for by the record, real quickly on the
mhm.
Raiders, they were second in the division last year, and they probably added the best overall player of any of these teams.
Sure.
I'll say that on Devontae Adams, number
Absolutely.
99 in Madden. So there you go.
In the AFC North, home of the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. Common, do you see a Super Bowl losing hangover like we see so many times with a team that makes it to the big game but comes up a little bit short? Or do you think the Bengals can win the division and continue to just kind of buck that trend?
I think the AFC North is going to be another tight division. It's going to be a 3-team race. I do think that the Ravens, with all the injuries they had last year, Ravens will be competing in the division. The Steelers, they've never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. They've got quarterback questions as of 12:32 Wednesday, August 31st. Unless I missed something, Tom, I still don't think they've named a starting quarterback. So
I don't think so, no.
that is their own thing to figure out. But Steelers are always going to be in the discussion. They've got a great defense. They got a great coach. They got Watt, the best defensive player maybe in the league. Najee Harris, fantastic running back. But I'm going to say the Bengals finish a little bit ahead of the Ravens and Steelers. And I think it's easy to say Super Bowl hangover, but you got to look at this team. It's gotten better. They made massive upgrades on the offensive line. That was the question mark with the Bengals. Burrow, I believe, was the most sacked quarterback in the league last year. There were a couple other teams that I think they gave up more sacks, but they had multiple quarterbacks going in and out. And he got sacked like a bunch of times against the Titans in that playoff game. They still won somehow. It was him almost getting sacked when I think Jamar Chase was open for maybe a game-winning Super Bowl pass, but he didn't have enough time to throw the ball because Aaron Donald was in his face. So I'm going to go with the Bengals because they improved their team. Like, was their Super Bowl run a little bit of a fluke last year? Yes, it was. It was a little bit of a fluke. They had a lot of things go right for them. However, they're better than they were last year. They are hands down a better team. It's year 2 of Burrow and Chase in the NFL together, although they did play together in college. T. Higgins is great. And I think that obviously the Browns, I think, are going to be the 4th place team. Not having Watson, it's the Browns. Same deal as the Chargers. Brown's going to Brown. I think those 3 teams, I think Burrow is hands down the better quarterback than whoever starts for the Steelers. And as good as Lamar Jackson is, I think Burrow's better than Lamar Jackson. And that Bengals defense really made some strides late in the season, was incredible against the Chiefs in the second half. So I think Cincinnati's got the best overall team. They've got a great kicker, by the way. They got a clutch kicker, a clutch quarterback. Give me the Bengals to win the North.
Yeah, I really like the Bengals as well. You listed all the reasons. It's one of those teams where they didn't say, hey, we got to the Super Bowl. You know, we're that good. They said, okay, we got to the Super Bowl. Now let's go and get some guys so we can win this thing. Really like what Cincinnati did in the offseason. So I've got them repeating as AFC North champions as well. Like you said, a little bit fluky as far as last season went, but I think that they've really improved themselves. And another year for Joe Burrow. I mean, the thing to consider with him, I mean, the Bengals lost to the Bears last season. Like, think about that for a second. And Joe Burrow was coming back from, I think it was multiple ligaments with a knee injury that he had his rookie season the year prior. So even the first kind of couple games of last year wasn't, you know, capital J, capital B Joe Burrow as far as he went. And then later as the season, as he progressed, got better, got back in a game flow, he really took off. And I think this season, having a full off season where he's not doing rehab, he's focused entirely on Zach Taylor's offense. This team really can go far, I think, as a division champion.
Might have been MVP the second half of the season. I agree with everything you said. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's see. Here's a division where we should pretty much be in solid lockstep. The AFC East, certainly with Dolphins improving by picking up Tyreek Hill. Patriots are kind of just doing whatever the Patriots are doing, you know, going way off other people's draft boards in that offseason process. And the Jets, of course, Jets having a really, really good draft themselves, but still have a lot of questions because it's a young team with a lot of different guys to kind of figure out their role. It takes some time in the NFL for that kind of talent to gel. So I think that this is going to lead us to the same consensus. Probably the easiest division to call is the Buffalo Bills winning it all.
Yeah, I think the Bills are going to win the East. They've won it the last 2 years, Tom. They were a top defense last year, top scoring defense, third scoring offense. They added Von Miller, veteran leadership. Gabriel Davis, like you mentioned, dude had a great game against the Chiefs. He could be that great number 2 receiver with Diggs. This is where it gets interesting as who's going to get second or third, because I think the Patriots and Dolphins are both legitimate wild card contenders. Dolphins have had 2 straight winning seasons, didn't make the playoffs, but 2 straight winning seasons with a very good defense, a defense that forces turnovers. Now they add Tyreek Hill with Jalen Waddle, who, by the way, set the rookie record for catches last year. That was one of the least talked about things in the football last year. 104 catches, NFL rookie record. They also added, I think it was Wilson from the Cowboys, another receiver. So their offense should be doing good. Tua looks good in camp, looked good in the preseason. I think him finally getting some weapons, improving an offensive line, et cetera, will make it good for the Dolphins. So I will wait more on this later because I think Dolphins and Patriots are 2 of my wild card contenders. So I'll wait on picking second and third in the division because I do have one of those teams making the wild card. So we will tease that. Jets are still distant fourth. Bills, absolutely best team in the East. They take home that crown.
Yeah, I think let's see. I have to look at my notes here as far as wild card teams go. Well, we'll see.
We got one more division though.
We do have one more division to get through. And last year, kind of surprising that the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry injured for a large portion of the season, and yet the Titans seem to get better? Question mark? I don't really know how they do that other than Mike Vrabel is some sort of wizard as a coach. I mean, we saw Ryan Tannehill go from being a pretty good quarterback to being a lukewarm kind of quarterback. And I don't see any reason at this point in his career why he would kind of rebound to where he was for the 2020-2021 season. So I think also got rid of A.J. Brown, who I know missed some games last season, but was their top receiver. So
Julio Jones also. I know he didn't work out there, but Julio Jones gone as well.
Exactly. So not looking at the Titans, I mean, for me personally, I kind of see it as a bit of a challenge for them to repeat as division champions. I mean, obviously Jacksonville is going to go through some growing pains with a new head coach. The Texans, as much as I really like Lovie Smith, they're just not a very good football team. So that leaves me, like, I've got Chargers and then with the Colts ready to get hurt again by both of those 9-8 teams that missed the playoffs last season. I've got the Colts winning the division. Matt Ryan, a little bit of a steadier presence at quarterback over Carson Wentz. Of course, Jonathan Taylor, just a fantastic running back. This is a team that really feels like they have a lot of good pieces. It just needs to come together for a full season. I think this is going to be the year for Indianapolis.
That's your adopted team. Last year, you picked
one
them
of many.
Picked them to make the Super Bowl, I think, last year, right?
That was
preseason. I think you had them in the Super Bowl.
Okay,
I think so.
Probably. That sounds about right.
You did have the Rams winning it all, I think. So
correct.
You did get that right, but you didn't get the AFC portion very correct.
Not even close.
I think you're going to like this. I'm going to agree here. And I think because we're both agreeing and because, like a lot of the country, we're underestimating the Titans, they're going to somehow win that division. Because they had the 1 seed in the AFC last year. I'm not sure how it happened. Tannehill wasn't great.
No.
Henry didn't play many games. I don't know how it happened, but it did. Their defense, though, overachieved a lot last year. I know they added some pieces, but that defense a couple years ago was really bad. They literally were getting in the playoffs on the back of Derrick Henry. I think we're finally going to see the Titans come back to reality a little bit. It's wide open. It's 50-50. We got to make a pick. It's 50-50. I'm going with the Colts for a lot of the reasons you said. I think Matt Ryan was out there on a terrible Atlanta team. Like, is Matt Ryan an MVP guy like he was a few years ago? I don't think so. But is Matt Ryan, to me, at least an average quarterback in the NFL? I think he might be better than average. I think he's rock solid. He doesn't have to be great because he has maybe the best running back. I mean, a healthy Henry's probably one. We have probably the two best running backs in the NFL in this division. Henry, number one. Taylor, number two. Those are the guys who've led the league in rushing. Taylor was first last year because Henry got hurt. Henry led it the last 2 years. So I do think that the receiving core for Tennessee worries me a little bit. They have Woods, I think, is their number one guy he's all right. Robert Woods is okay, but that's like who you want as your two. Treylon Burks, a talented rookie. That's a guy who you want as your three as a rookie. And these guys have to be 1 and 2. So Derrick Henry, he's going to be Derrick Henry, but he's going to face a lot of guys in that box. Like, it's going to be tough with all the defense up there. The Colts are going to open up Jonathan Taylor's hose a little bit better because they have a passing game. They have a passing quarterback. Also, the Colts defense is really good. Darius Leonard, I think he's going by Shaquille Leonard now. He is the highest paid linebacker in the NFL, and rightfully so. 3-time first-team All-Pro, made 3 Pro Bowls in 4 seasons. He's led the league in tackles before, led it in forced fumbles this last year. Really good Colts defense. I'm going to go Colts slightly over the Titans, but I would not be shocked if Tennessee wins the division.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the wild cards for the AFC. We've given out our division winners, and we've talked about a couple of teams that we think, hey, it's close. It could be a coin flip. So, Common, who do you have as your 3 wild card teams? This is the system now where one team gets the bye week, and then 2 through 7 battle it out in that first wild card week, and the super wild card weekend, I guess, is now what they're calling it. Who do you have making it there?
So I've got like 5 teams, I think, battling for 3 spots. I think Steelers, Ravens got shots out of the AFC North. Actually, to be honest, we really have 7 teams. I mean, Steelers, Ravens, 3 teams out of the AFC West, which would be Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, and we have Dolphins, Patriots. So I think that's 7. Did I count that correctly? 7 teams, Tom, fighting for 3 spots that all have a legitimate chance. 7 teams. That is insane. And I want to say all 7 of those teams are roughly even to me. Roughly even. That is how close these teams are. So my wild card spots, I'm going to go with the Broncos as the first one. I do like what the Broncos are doing. I think Russell Wilson is a huge addition for them. They needed that quarterback. He is a proven winner, former Super Bowl champ. They have a great defense. They have a good young running back. Receivers, again, we'll see how good they are. Are they that good, or were they overhyped a little? We'll see. But I think with Wilson and the defense, Denver gets a wild card spot. That is probably my most easiest pick to say. So the second one I'm going with is simply because of schedule. I look at the AFC South. It is the easiest division in the AFC. Texans and Jaguars are dreadful. So all these other teams, the AFC North, everyone's good. AFC West, everyone's good. AFC East, everyone but the Jets is good. So I'm going by schedule. AFC South has the easiest schedule. So whoever doesn't win the South is going to get that second wild card spot. Since I picked the Colts, I'm going to take the Titans to get the wild card spot. I mean, this team was the 1 seed last year. We're dropping them out of a division title, but how much can they drop and not make the playoffs? I think Tennessee gets in there. So this one is the third one. This is the hardest one for me here because I think it's wide open. It could be another team out of the AFC West, but just because these teams will beat up on each other, I just don't see 3 AFC West teams making the playoffs. That is a stretch. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Now, talent-wise, 3 teams should make it out of the AFC West, but schedule-wise does not dictate that. So process of elimination, I will throw out the other 2 AFC West teams. So that leaves me with the Patriots, Dolphins, Steelers, and Ravens. Those 4 teams, I got to pick one, Tom, and I've been truthfully going back and forth. This is how close it is. I think we have the Patriots and Steelers, 2 model organizations, Tomlin and Belichick, 2 of the top 3 coaches in the NFL, along with Andy Reid for me. I think that they just don't have as good of players as those other teams. I really think the coaches are great. Steelers got some quarterback questions. And their defenses are very good, but they're not quite the defenses we've seen with Steelers and Pats in the past. Pats did lose some guys as well. So I'm going to say remove the Steelers and Patriots. So this leaves me with two teams, the Ravens and the Dolphins, which is I got to pick a team that didn't make it last year. I know the Ravens didn't make it last year either. So those are both easy picks to pick a team that didn't make it last year. Colts, by the way, division winner. Got to pick one division winner that didn't make it last year. That's my pick there. I'm going to go with the Dolphins here. I think the Dolphins have done amazing in the offseason. They got Tyreek Hill. They improved their receivers. They improved their offensive line. They got some new coaches. They already have a good defense. They've already had 2 winning seasons. And I think Tua's being slept on a little bit. He still has a winning record as a quarterback in the NFL. He hasn't put up gaudy numbers, but he hasn't been bad. And that's without having coaches that really let him pass the ball, without having an offensive line, without having an array of weapons that he now all of a sudden has. So the Dolphins haven't made the playoffs in forever. We had the Bills a couple years ago break that streak. Believe it or not, I mean, the Bills hadn't been in the playoffs in a long time. They're the Super Bowl favorite now, but that franchise was not headed in the right direction. I like the moves Miami has made. It's going to be close. Like I said, 7 teams could all make it. Any one of those teams that are listed, any team in the AFC West, the Ravens, the Steelers, all of those teams can make it. The Patriots, it's the Patriots. They can very well make it with Bill Belichick. But I'm going Miami. So I've got my division winners, Chiefs. We got who else? Colts. I've got the Bengals. I've got the Bills. Then I've got the wild cards, Dolphins. The last one, I'll go Titans and Broncos, my 7 playoff teams. I do think the Bills probably get the 1 seed just because their division is a little bit easier than the Chiefs. Chiefs likely get the 2 seed, but I do think those are my wild card teams. Cannot wait to hear yours. I think we have every same division winner minus you've got the Chargers over the Chiefs, right?
Absolutely, yeah. My 3, I mean, obviously, Chiefs, I have them in the playoffs as well, simply because Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they're changing out a couple pieces on offense, but that's not nearly enough to kind of disrupt the continuity that franchise has. Give me the Broncos as well. That's a team that's been kind of like hovering close to playoff contention with Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater as quarterback. Obviously, picking up Russell Wilson is a huge, huge move. That's going to be, like you mentioned earlier, that's going to be kind of like the proving for some of these young receivers, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, if these guys are actually as good as we all think they are. Now they have a competent quarterback to kind of help them prove that. And then for the last wild card team, I'm also going to go with the team that didn't make the playoffs last year. But I'm going with the Ravens. I mean, look at how they ended up 8-9. Sure, it was last place in the division, technically speaking, because that's just a really tough division last year. But Lamar Jackson missed time. Like, I think 2 or 3 of their starting cornerbacks missed time. Running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, all these guys missed time. And running back room is a little bit shaky to start the season. But, I mean, the Baltimore starts on the road against the Jets. So even if you don't necessarily have great running back play, I think that they can win that one handily. And then one matchup that's going to come into pretty big prominence, week 2, they're hosting the Dolphins in Baltimore. I think that's going to be enough of an edge because I can see Baltimore winning that game over the Dolphins as they're still trying to figure some things out as far as getting everything timed up. So I'll go with Baltimore just as a healthier team, deeper this season. I mean, obviously, injuries is always the caveat, but looking at their defense, they have depth all around on all levels. So give me Baltimore as a wild card team. In no particular order based on record. I'm not going to say like Chiefs and then Broncos and the Ravens. Those are just the 3 teams that I have in there.
All right, real quick, just to play devil's advocate again. It could happen. I said 7 teams all have a shot. I just struggle with 3 AFC West teams making the playoffs. And then secondly, for the record, Dolphins and Ravens was by far my hardest pick. I went back and forth on those. You laid out some good arguments. That game could very well decide who wins. It could be the tiebreaker. I'll play devil's advocate here. I know the Dolphins were at home, but the Dolphins did beat the Ravens handedly last year. I know some injured Baltimore players. Lamar Jackson did play in that game, and Baltimore's defense that you mentioned, Tom, is not nearly what it was. It was one of the worst pass defenses last year. Good luck against Tyreek Hill. I'm going to take the Dolphins to win that game, and that'll be the tiebreaker for Miami in that tough race. Baltimore winning that game, getting the wild card spot would not surprise me. But we got to make picks on the show, and it's always fun to disagree. So give me the
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps it up for the AFC for now. Of course, we're going to be coming back to them with our conference winner. But of course, now we have to go into the NFC, and not as compelling as the AFC in terms of, as you said, Common, there are 7 teams that you could pick to be a wild card, and you can disagree, but you can't call it egregious.
Sure.
NFC, I don't think has that level of flexibility on that. We'll start with the NFC West because, like the AFC, that is the most competitive, most compelling division to my mind. 3 teams that you can pick, not necessarily as good as what the AFC West has. You're going to say 2, but yes. I think, reasonable. You can kind of say Cardinals, maybe a little bit in there. I'm closer to you on that one, but I could definitely see somebody picking the Cardinals. And if I squint just right, I can see it. But really, it comes down to Rams and 49ers. Yeah. I'll take these off. Let my natural eyesight.
You look different. You actually definitely look significantly better with glasses. Some people look.
I agree. There's a reason why I have not done LASIK. I've done the homework on this one.
Okay, there you go. All right. Well, for the record, Tom, I do think it's a 2-team race. The Cardinals have been right there the last few years, but they've consistently gotten second or third. I do not trust Kyler Murray simply when the games are close, when the season is late. It just the stats are out there. Kyler Murray is not great in close games. He makes a lot of mistakes in the red zone, a lot of mistakes as an own 20. To win the division, you got to make the clutch plays. DeAndre Hopkins is out early in the season. This 5-1 start the Cardinals get off to, I don't think that's going to happen. So 2-team race for me. Seahawks obviously were last year, losing Russell Wilson hurts. I think the Rams and 49ers, along with the Bucs, I will say the Bucs are there, but we have 2 of the top 3 teams in the NFC in the same division. I think they're both fantastic. I think both teams are pretty rock solid across the board. Offense, defense, special teams, well-coached teams, they're excellent. I'm going to go with the Rams simply because of the most important position, quarterback. I think that the Rams have Matthew Stafford. I do think Trey Lance is a young talent. I think he's going to be better than people think. He's got the right players around him. Debo, George Kittle, Elijah Mitchell, the young running back. But simply put, the Rams, and Debo is amazing. Kittle is amazing. Those guys are so good. But the Rams have the 2 best offensive players in the division in Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, Triple Crown guy last year, receiving yards, touchdowns, catches. And they've got the best defensive player, Aaron Donald. And as much as I like Shanahan, I think McVay probably has the coaching edge as well. So I like the Rams just slightly over the 49ers. We did talk about this a couple weeks ago. San Francisco, a little bit younger, likely to be the class of that division for years to come. But for this season, I'm going defending Super Bowl champs. Rams take the crown. One thing to think about, though, 49ers have done very well against the Rams in recent years. That NFC championship game was an exception. But Niners have done well in the matchup with the Rams. I say they split this year. But if the Niners can win both somehow, then they can get the tiebreaker.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to go 1-2, exact same as you on that one comment. Rams. I was on them ever since they got Matthew Stafford because that was a team that truly screamed out, hey, all they need is the coach. And what did they do? They win the Super Bowl in large part because Odell Beckham Jr. was a significant piece for them. Obviously, injured last season in the postseason. I believe in the Super Bowl, he was out with an injury in the first half. what do the Rams do? They go and get Allen Robinson from the Chicago Bears, a guy who was really almost punitively misused under the
Yes,
previous coaching staff.
sure was.
So I think they upgrade next to Cooper Kupp, and of course still have some other talented weapons as well. And Sean McVay, of course. I think the thing that he'll have to avoid a little bit is, hey, I've been to two Super Bowls, I've won a Super Bowl, I'm this young genius head coach, like watch me be fancy. I think that as long as he can kind of like insulate himself from that a little bit, I mean, obviously Aaron Donald coming back, arguably not necessarily the most important, but probably the best overall talented player on that team. Him making the decision to come back instead of retiring. Of course, the contract extension helps. And then, of course, Jalen
Money
Ramsey,
talks.
a great cornerback. And did they add Bobby Wagner at the linebacking level? So they have they're adding these stars across the
Yep.
board for this team,
Mhm.
winning the Super Bowl and going out and, quite frankly, getting any better or getting better. So I really
Yes.
like the Rams this season as well. San Francisco, I think they're going to go as well as Trey Lance goes. If he proves that he is going to be this super dynamic throw and run quarterback that Kyle Shanahan can use in myriad ways, just like he kind of uses Deebo Samuel, not just as a receiver, but as a bit of a runner as well. That just gives a defensive coordinator way too much to think about. So if Lance can prove himself this year, and I'm fairly confident that he can, San Francisco is going to be a really challenging team to beat as well. So
And get
I think
this,
we kind of cover a little bit of two segments with this one talking about the division, but I agree with you. The Cardinals, like, they needed to put in
No.
a very public clause in Kyler Murray's contract
Embarrassing.
extension about you have to be in the film room, or else we're going to be able to void certain parts of the contract. I mean, I have a stat. I think I deleted it off my phone, but I took a picture last year where Cliff Kingsbury teams over the last 8 games, the last half of the season, it was something like 1-7, 2-6. It was just terrible, dreadful in the second half. So we'll see if there's any lessons learned, but from a talent level, I think there is a disparity between those top 2 teams, then the Cardinals, and then obviously Seahawks. Pete Carroll's a good enough coach to keep that team engaged and competitive in games, but I think they're going to be one of those teams that loses a lot of single digit one score type of games. I don't necessarily see them getting blown out a ton, just because I think Carroll's too good of a coach schematically to allow that to happen. But I also don't think they're going to be winning those close ones either.
2 real quick things. First
Sure.
off, Seattle. I do think Seattle has no chance to win the division, but I think their over-unders at 5.5. And I'm like, my goodness, when is the last time the Seahawks didn't win at least 6 games? Tough division. Give me Seattle to get the over on that win total.
Sure.
If you're looking for some betting action. Kyler Murray, completely agree. Quarterback, intangibles, got to be a leader. He's not a leader. One thing to say real quickly about Trey Lance, if for some reason he is an absolute total flop, they do have Jimmy Garoppolo back for one more year. If he gets hurt running the ball, they do have Jimmy Garoppolo. And we've already seen him take him to the Super Bowl, take him to multiple playoff games. So 49ers definitely going to be a wild card team for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So moving from the NFC West to the NFC East, Drew's Cowboys winning the division last season, but of course going out in infamy with a questionable last second or last 11-second decision by their quarterback, Dak Prescott. Certainly that could be a little bit of a coaching issue, as we've also seen in the preseason with the Cowboys racking up the most penalties. I'm pretty sure there are the most penalties in the preseason.
All right.
So certainly a pretty talented team across the board. Common, do you see them repeating as division champs in the NFC East? Certainly a step down from a lot of these top divisions we've talked about so far.
Yeah, what's that saying? Chargers gonna Charger, Cowboys gonna Cowboy. That's how it works, right, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
This division is also a 2-team race. This is probably might be the toughest division to pick in the NFC. I do think 49ers Rams is also hard. I do think the Packers aren't as slam dunk as I thought they were, but I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to give away picks, but I'm pretty sure the North and South are pretty set in stone. The NFC East is going to be a battle. I think Commanders and Giants, obviously, a step below, but Cowboys, Eagles, this might be the toughest division for me to pick in the entire NFL. That is how close this division race is going to be. Dallas did get worse in the offseason. They lost Wilson in the receiver position, Amari Cooper, multi-time Pro Bowler. They had their offensive lineman. He's going to miss a lot of the season. They had an offensive lineman go down with injury. So the Cowboys are a worse football team than they were last year. That is on paper, at least. We'll see what happens on the field. On paper, they are worse than last year. Eagles on paper are improved from last year. A.J. Brown, they got in a trade. Very good draft. They got some good draft players. So they just picked up another guy in the secondary, I think, yesterday. And Jalen Hurts now, he's got Smith and Brown, two legitimate receivers. So this is going to be very, very close. I'm still going to pick the Cowboys despite all that, just because I do think that Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. I think that matters a lot. I do think he's a better overall quarterback. I do think that the Cowboys still have a better running game in Zeke and Tony Pollard, really good running backs. Eagles defense should be getting better on paper, but you look at the stats last year, Dallas was actually a better defense last year than the Eagles were. So Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, a lot of young talent on that defense. I think Dallas is a little bit better on both sides of the ball. A little bit better on offense, a little bit better on defense. The Eagles are right there. They're so close, but I'm still picking Dallas in the East.
Well, for a little bit of contrast, I'm going to go with one of my favorite helmet decals, having the Eagles winning the division. I think that this is a make or break year. I know earlier, a couple weeks ago, we had the Trey Lance versus Jalen Hurts discussion, and this is kind of a make or break season for Jalen Hurts, given that this is his third year in the league. He was a second-round draft pick, so not the same commitment as having a first-round draft pick quarterback. And he's shown some, good talent. He's shown that from a, say, fantasy football perspective, he is an excellent quarterback, but that doesn't equate, obviously, to real life football, where we still see some accuracy issues, some decision issues. So basically what the Eagles have said is, hey, we went out, we have acquired as many pieces around you as you need to succeed. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith on the outside, Dallas Goedert as a pretty underrated tight end. Sure. And then, of course, Miles Sanders didn't sniff the end zone last year, but still a fairly talented running back. So, and not to mention a really strong offensive line as well for Philadelphia. So this really comes down to Eagles have to win the division, or else Jalen Hurts might not be the quarterback next season. Or he might be next season, but the Eagles, with their they have a bunch of draft picks for next year's draft, can easily make a move in a quarterback-rich class next season to certainly grab his replacement if they underachieve this year. So for me, I'm picking the Eagles over the Cowboys. I think, injury to offensive line, losing too many receivers, and I can't get over this whole. We talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers winning one Super Bowl and how could he not have won more? Is the answer to that question Mike McCarthy was his head coach? I know it's kind of popular to pile on him as far as national media goes. But when you look at kind of some of the things around that, is he going to be the inhibitor on this team that keeps them from achieving their ultimate potential? Still, a lot of talent in Dallas. We're going to be watching a lot of them. With a new broadcasting call. We're not going to get Troy Aikman talking Cowboys unless they're on Monday Night Football. But we're still going to be seeing them in that 3:25 time slot, Sunday afternoons, at least Central Time division. But give me the Eagles to win the NFC East. Cowboys, probably finishing second just because Commanders and Giants are a bit far behind.
Yes.
In terms of teams also far behind, we go to the NFC North where, all right, we're just going to get it right off the bat. The Chicago Bears, our beloved Bears, probably going to be picking top 5 heading into next season unless there's some market improvements.
They will not be.
So you don't think they're going to be a bottom 5 team?
No. Call me a guy who gets caught up in the moment, but I've been very impressed with the Bears the last couple preseason games. I watched the game. It was the Browns. I know I
Sure.
heard there was a couple starters not playing on the Browns. The Bears have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. I think the Bears defense looks good. Justin Fields seems to be turning the corner. I do like Darnell Mooney. Montgomery is back. I'm going to say this. Bears and Vikings will be a lot closer to the Packers than recent years. Green Bay's going to win the division. I'm not going to go absolutely bonkers here. Green Bay's going to win the division. They got the best player in the division by far in Aaron Rodgers. They lose Devontae Adams, which hurts because Rodgers is so used to relying on Adams. So that's gonna hurt him. Christian Watson could be a good young player they just drafted. I think the Vikings are going to be very competitive in the division. I think that having Jefferson, Thielen, Dalvin Cook missed some time last year should be healthy. They will be right there. But I do think Packers actually are better than the Vikings because they've got a better defense. Minnesota's defense used to be very good, was dreadful last year. So I got the Packers first, but Vikings not far behind in second, Bears not far behind in third. I do think that the Bears will not be drafting in the top 5. Look for Chicago to win maybe 7 games this year, Tom, which is still a losing season, but it's an improvement.
Sure.
I think that this NFC North is still not a great division, but I think that's all of these teams in the division are going to improve a little bit. Packers do decrease themselves, but yeah, Green Bay is going to take home the crown as they usually do.
Yeah, so we're going to have a little bit of disagreement because I do think Lions over Bears at the bottom of the division, and I do have the Packers or the Vikings close to the Packers, but I have the Vikings coming ahead of the Packers this year to win the NFC North. So
let's go.
I think that the Packers made a mistake in trading Devontae Adams. I know he didn't really want to be there anymore, but I mean, we look at the MVP season, like a big reason why Aaron Rodgers wins MVP is because he has more touchdowns than, say Tom Brady. And that's because he's throwing a lot of them to Devontae Adams. And so we're turning around and we're saying it's going to be Alan Lazard, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Robert Tonyan. Like this feels a lot like Kansas City Light as far as trading away arguably your best playmaker and then saying, well, we have all their talented pieces around. I mean, Marcus Valdes-Scantling goes from exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like it's light is that you don't have that secondary top playmaker to kind of help carry the load as a bit of a safety blanket. I mean, is Randall Cobb going to be that for the Packers? I don't know. I mean, certainly
2011
AJ Dillon are going to be a strong running back duo for the Packers, and that can be something that they can perhaps lean on throughout the season. I mean, Matt LaFleur has shown that he's a great coach. So perhaps I'm kind of like underselling the Packers as far as their skill talent goes. But looking at the Vikings, we talk about, hey, does great offense beats great defense. And I think what we saw a lot last year was, not great coaching decisions from Mike Zimmer. Vikings bring in Kevin O'Connell from the LA Rams. So he's bringing a little bit more of that offensive flair. And if you look at, say, the offensive matchups, obviously Stafford better than Cousins. Kupp and Justin Jefferson, you could probably say are relatively even.
Second in receiving yards last year, Justin Jefferson.
Absolutely.
Most receiving yards for the first 2 years to start an NFL career. Probably the most underrated player in the NFL.
Absolutely. And then you look at like Adam Thielen kind of comping him with, say, Odell Beckham Jr. And then, of course, Dalvin Cook better than Cam Akers or anybody that LA had running the ball for them. So there's enough similarities that I can see a coach moving from one team to another, offensive coordinator to head coach, and bringing enough of that with him to say, hey, I've got all the pieces to run what I want to run right here, right now. And of course, it helps in Minnesota playing in a dome. Later on in the season as inclement weather kind of piles up, they're still going to be able to run that pass-heavy offense throughout the year. So I like the Vikings to win the division almost as much as I like the Packers not winning the division. Unfortunately, the rest of it's poor enough that they're still going to be in the postseason. but I've got a little bit of a surprise. There's something I'm definitely going to be cheering
Sure.
for. It's always nice to pick something and want to cheer for it too.
Let's
I'm
go.
all about going against the
I'm all
Packers.
for it. Just the Vikings defense to me is a big question mark.
Sure.
Packers defense much better, but I hope you're right, Tom. As a Bears
Mhm.
fan, I hope you're right.
And then we've got to round things up for the division winners, the NFC South. I think we're probably going to go the same way that we kind of went with the AFC East, where there's a pretty clear cut favorite team, and then everybody else is kind of below that. It's the Buccaneers. It's the
No
greatest of
doubt.
all time. Tom Brady coming back for perhaps a swan song or maybe a penultimate swan. I don't even know where we're at this point with Tom Brady in the drum.
He'll be
He's getting
back.
almost Farvian. He's getting almost Farvian.
Well, he's older than
Um,
Favre. But
well,
I
yeah,
guess
but in
the
terms of the
comebacks and
I'm done,
retirements.
I'll come back,
Yep,
yada
yep,
yada.
yep.
Obviously, biggest change for the Buccaneers is that Bruce Arians has moved up to the front office. Todd Bowles has replaced him as head coach, but even that feels pretty good on continuity, given that Bowles was the defensive coordinator for that Super Bowl winning defense. And they're still extraordinarily talented on that side of the ball. I don't see any argument why the Buccaneers can't win the division or shouldn't win the division. Maybe there's some devil advocate that you have for me, but I think that's pretty well locked up.
No, the Bucks are winning the division. They've got the deepest team. They got better than last year, to be honest with you. Adding Julio Jones, Chris Godwin was hurt last year. I know Leonard Fournette and his weight's a question mark, but I think he's going to be fine.
He'll play into shape.
Losing Gronk does hurt a little bit, but they are so far ahead of the rest of the division. The only really, really crazy devil's advocate argument would be that the Saints have owned them the last couple of years. If they can beat them twice again, but it's just there's too many question marks there. Breeze and Peyton aren't there anymore. Panthers should be improved with Baker Mayfield if McCaffrey's healthy, but it's just Bucks are the best. I'll give you the Bucks for sure.
Absolutely. So that brings us to wild card talk. I think we're already in lockstep on one team with the San Francisco 49ers. We went into pretty good depth on them earlier in the program. So who do you have running out? Not necessarily as many other teams kind of like fighting for these spots. I think there's probably like 3 or 4 for those last 2 spots, if that makes sense. Where are you landing on those?
All right. So, yeah, 49ers, absolutely. They're a top 3 team in the NFC. The only reason why they're a wild card spot is because they play in the division with the defending champion Rams. So, otherwise, I agree. There's not as many teams fighting for those spots. I think that it's Vikings, Saints are fighting for that last spot, as are the team I'm going to pick, the Eagles. So I look at the NFC East, easiest schedule. So Eagles, Cowboys, whoever doesn't win the division should be the wild card. I've obviously got the Cowboys winning the division. Eagles were already a wild card team last year, and they got better in the offseason, adding A.J. Brown. They had a good draft. So Eagles repeat as a wild card team. I'm going to take the 49ers, as you mentioned, and then this leaves it down to 2 teams for me. Of course, there's going to be a team that surprises us. It always happens. There might be a team in the mix, but for picking's sake, I have gone back and forth on this. It's the Saints and Vikings. Those are the last 2 teams for that final wild card spot, and I'm going to go. You're making my decision easy for me because I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you because I've gone back and forth. I'm going to say Vikings do not make the playoffs because their defense is dreadful, terrible defense. Kirk Cousins does not win close games, does not win big games. Some of that isn't fair to him, but that's the guy. He's known for the stats and not the wins. And there's a little bit of truth to that, to be honest, Tom, a little bit of truth to that. So I'm going to go with the Saints. I know they lost Peyton and Breeze. I think Jameis Winston, right before he got hurt last year, do I dare say this, was starting to play very well. He played 1 preseason game, and it was spectacular. I think he completed every pass in the game. Saints have a pretty solid defense, way, way better than the Vikings. I know their offense isn't quite as good as the Vikings. I know Michael Thomas is seemingly always hurt, but Alvin Kamara is there. He's fantastic. I think that the Saints, to me, are going to just eke out that wild card spot against the Vikings. Nothing would surprise me there, though, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to go. Let's see.
You got to go Packers.
Kind of
Or are you going too
kind of like
crazy?
some, yeah, no, like I'm going a lot of mirroring with the picks where I'm saying, okay, whoever doesn't win the NFC East, in this case for me, it's the Dallas Cowboys, simply because you got 4 games against Giants and Commanders. That's a pretty significant advantage just in terms of schedule comparisons. And then, yeah, the Packers, same principle. You got Bears and Lions twice each. Rounding out that, I think that the Saints are going to be that one team that could possibly be mixing it up a little bit. It's just I don't see as big of a gap between, say, the Saints and the Panthers as I do like Packers, Bears, Lions, and then Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. I
Sure.
could easily see, Carolina and New Orleans going, splitting it 1-1 type of thing. And I mean, Saints traded away Chauncey Gardner Johnson, to the Eagles. So, definitely a guy that gets in people's heads, but also a pretty talented defender. In my mind, it's kind of like, why would they make that move? Do they really like the guys that they already have on that side of the football? But it's also, they got a little bit worse, a little bit more unproven, along with Penning, their offensive tackle, highly touted rookie. I believe he got carted off. I don't know if it's a season-ending injury. I haven't seen an update on that, but certainly that's going to be significant as well. Not to mention potential Alvin Kamara suspension. There's just too many unknowns for me with the New Orleans Saints, where I could definitely see them, if they answer all those questions clearly, they are going to be right there in the playoff hunt. But I also see enough question marks that maybe this isn't the year. Maybe next year they'll be a little bit stronger with some more health, a little bit of continuity on that staff. But I think we're pretty much in lockstep with most of these division and wildcard picks.
Yep. A couple very last things before we get in the conference championship games. We're just going to pick who makes the AFC championship, who makes the NFC championship, and then obviously who makes the Super Bowl. But if there's an outside team that has a shot, it would be the Panthers to win, to get a
Hmm.
wild card spot, just because if Christian McCaffrey is healthy, things can be different. If Baker Mayfield plays like a first overall pick, things can be different. So that is maybe the one team. I'm not picking them, but if there's one team that could surprise us, it would be the Panthers. They do have a good defense. Real quickly, Tom, I'm looking up these numbers while I'm
Hmm.
talking. I just want to get the stats here. I know they're near the bottom. So Minnesota Vikings were third worst defense in the league by yards. And just want to get a stats background because I know I'm saying their defense is bad, and
Yeah,
they were like points per game allowed. They were not bottom five, but just outside it. So that's just my one thought on the Vikings. Their defense has massive work to do. But let's get into the conference
absolutely.
championship games.
Yeah, conference championship games last year we had the Bills and the Bengals, and then we had the
No, Chargers or not Chargers, Chiefs and Bengals.
Chiefs and Bengals. That's right. That was the way the overtime game went. And then we had the Rams and the what's the Buccaneers last year? I should have like looked that
49ers.
up. 49ers.
49ers.
So in terms of Super Bowl, I mean, I basically just said what I think that the conference championship games are going to be. I think it's going to be Bills and Bengals, in what should be a fantastic matchup there, and then Rams and Bucks. I mean, Rams and Bucks seems pretty easy and obvious. I'm almost like kicking myself for picking
I
chalk
know,
on that
right?
one. But it really is looking at the rest of the NFC, just not nearly as good. Bills and Bengals. And I know the Bengals won the AFC last year. I know Chiefs and Bills will be a very, very popular pick to see. But again, taking away Tyreek Hill, who I had as the second most important player, just because we saw teams kind of take Travis Kelce out of games in terms of hit him off the line of scrimmage, bracket coverage him, that type of thing. That the Chiefs really, their offense takes off when Tyreek Hill is able to break one open for a really, really big score. So how do they replace that in Kansas City? I think that's a question that needs to be answered. I just like the Bengals, another great helmet decal that I'm going to go with. So I'm going to go Bills Bengals in the AFC title game, and then Rams and Buccaneers in the NFC.
Look up Bengals flat white helmet and you will absolutely love it. So Bengals lunar
I'm
helmet.
looking forward to
Those
that
are
too. That's going to be
those are
fantastic.
those are great. I work in sports memorabilia, Tom. You know this. I see some
Hmm.
great helmets. Bengals are great. The best standard helmet in sports, non-flashes, stuff like that, is actually the Rams, by the way. The Rams helmet is shiny and pretty. But I
That
will
was
go with
the first. They were the first team to have a logo on their helmet. Was the Rams?
there you go. So let's do the AFC here. Then we can predict the NFC. I think we're sort of on the same page. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
go Chiefs Bills in this one. So this is the rematch of the AFC title game. 2 years ago, they met in the divisional round last year simply because the Bills were a lower seed. I think these are the two best teams in the AFC. I know the Bengals beat the Chiefs last year twice. I think that Kansas City just didn't have it those games. To beat a team a third time is very tough. I think Kansas City with Andy Reid and company are going to be prepared for the Bengals. And I think in some ways, the Chiefs offense, yes, they're losing the deep threat of Tyreek Hill, but the second half, the first half of last year, teams really took away Hill and the deep threat. The Chiefs were struggling getting turnovers. The second half, they actually had the longest drives in the league or something, the stat was for the second half of the year. So we were used to seeing these 3-play, 90-yard drives for Kansas City. Well, it was a lot of 10, 15 play drives. I think they already got used to that last year. I think they'll get used to it today. This season, I think Travis Kelce is very consistent. You talk about teams taking him away, his numbers consistently across the board were really good. I just think the Chiefs' offense is a little bit better than the Bengals. The Chiefs' defense is definitely underrated, and I think the Chiefs' coaching staff is great. So that would leave me the Chiefs and Bills. The Bills' kryptonite is the Chiefs. On paper, Buffalo, in theory, should have a better defense. However, we'll get in the Super Bowl picks here in a little bit, but I'll say this. Maybe we should just make them now out of the AFC. Then we do the NFC. I think that matchups are a big part of football. Matchups matter. What numbers you have across the rest of the league versus what numbers you have across a certain team matter. The Bills defense, which was statistically the top scoring defense in the NFL last year, they could not stop the Chiefs in the playoffs. Even in the regular season game, there were a couple turnovers, a couple penalty calls. I know they finally beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but it was because of Josh Allen's greatness, not because of their defense. That Bills defense just does not match up well against the Chiefs. They just can't stop them. I know the Chiefs also doesn't match up great against the Bills, but the Chiefs have proven in the last 4 meetings, they've won 3 of the last 4. They got Clyde Edwards-Helaire healthy. I think they got a lot of guys around there. I like Kansas City to get back to the Super Bowl. I think they're going to beat the Bengals. They'll beat the Bills again. And I just ultimately, as great as Josh Allen is, I still think Mahomes is a little bit better. I still think he has great weapons. I like Andy Reid. I'm going to take the Chiefs over the Bills in the AFC title game, and they'll win in Buffalo. I'll say that because I think the Bills are going to get the 1 seed because they have that de facto 2 free wins against the Jets, no free wins for the Chiefs in the division. So Kansas City actually goes into Buffalo and takes down the Bills, makes the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, I've got out of the Bills-Bengals game, I'm going to go with Buffalo. Just a little bit better on offense, or at least better quarterback play, and then I like their defense better than the Bengals. So I have the Bills representing the AFC for the Lombardi Trophy.
Super Bowl favorite Bills, by the way, Tom. That's the favorite.
Absolutely.
You're going chalk, Mr. Chalk today.
I am going chalk on this one. Who do you like out of the NFC? I mean, I already announced I like the Bucs and the Rams facing off for that one. Do you see it breaking out any differently?
I've got Bucs Rams as well. The only thing I would say here is look out for the 49ers. If Trey Lance is going to be as great as I think he is, they got a shot. Again, matchups matter. 49ers have had the Rams number. Did the Rams get over the hump in that NFC title game last year? Maybe, but San Francisco, I think, has a shot as well. That's one not to sleep on. These guys have been in the Super Bowl the last few years. They were in the NFC Championship last year. So that'd be the one team to look out for. However, I do think that I am high on Trey Lance. I do like Jimmy G also, but you look at Tom Brady, you look at Matthew Stafford, the quarterback position is the most important. And I still think those guys have the clear edge over the Niners. So, yes, Rams Bucks in the NFC Championship game. I'm going to take the Bucks to beat the Rams, though. Last year, Rams did win the game, but that was without Chris Godwin playing for the Bucks. They didn't have Julio Jones. They added Russell Gage as well. I mean, it's like the rich get richer. I know they lost Gronk, but like again, like Gronk is really good, but Cameron Brate is actually a pretty good tight end as well. So I feel like they added more than they lost, and they're adding because Godwin was hurt. Even Mike Evans played parts of last year banged up. So I think that the Bucks make adjustments based off that tape. I know it's last year's tape, but I feel like if anyone can make adjustments, it's Tom Brady. And when two teams are close, I think it's almost like smarter to pick the team that maybe lost the last matchup because they can see what went wrong. I think that's what the Chiefs can do with the Bengals. I do think the Chiefs and Bills is a little different case though, because the Chiefs have beaten the Bills so much now that it's like they do have their number. So I'm going to go Bucks over Rams. I know I picked this Super Bowl. I can't remember.
You've been chasing this ever since the Buccaneers got the Chiefs 2 years back.
I know.
You've been chasing this one.
Well, and I'm trying to remember, Tom, because I know at one point that season where the Bucks beat the Chiefs, I'll be honest, I don't remember my preseason pick. I know I picked the Chiefs. I'm not 100% sure who I picked out of the NFC that year, but like mid-season and pre-playoffs, I did have Chiefs Bucks 2 years ago, and it did happen. I did pick the wrong winner. Last year, I had Chiefs Bucks in a rematch. It's hard for the rematch to happen. I should have, maybe not gone that route. But this year, we do have the rematch. We've got maybe the GOAT, Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes is probably the one guy who could pass him up. Personally, you know where I stand on this. I think Mahomes is a more talented and better player than Brady ever was. I think Mahomes, to me, is the best player ever. He just needs longevity. I think across the board, he probably won't pass Brady, even though he'll surpass all his statistical marks. I just don't know if he can get to 7 Super Bowls. But if there's one guy who could topple Brady, the most realistic guy out there right now is Patrick Mahomes. He has already won a Super Bowl. He's already won a league MVP. Statistically, he is on pace for the best statistical career of all time. And that would be huge for Mahomes, though, because if he can beat Brady in the Super Bowl, years down the road, we can say they were 1-1 in the Super Bowl. If Brady wins and it's 2-0, might as well close that debate as far as perceptions. I like to not base things off one game, but if they meet in the Super Bowl and Brady wins again, that would be 8 Super Bowls. And that discussion, as far as the country as a whole, will be closed. So give me the Chiefs. Chiefs and Bucks in the Super Bowl. Chiefs improved the offensive line so much. It got better last year. It got better this year. They saw what the Bucks did to them, and they improved. They're ranked, like some rankings have them as the best offensive line. There's different rankings out there, but the Chiefs across the board are ranked the top 5 offensive line. So look for Kansas City to take home the Lombardi Trophy this year.
See, for me, I'm going to go. It's nice that we're going to have like a different pick. I mean, mine feels a little bit more chalky, given that everybody and their mother is jumping on a table for the Buffalo Bills.
Smash some tables, baby.
I really like the Rams too, just because outside of the Rams, I mean, you've got the 49ers as a talented team, but question mark, obviously, at the quarterback position. Buccaneers talented. But quite frankly, I just don't think they're as good. So in the title game, I definitely have the Rams over the Buccaneers in that one. So between Bills and Rams, storyline Castleman, I can't go wrong here. Either picking Bills, a repeat Super Bowl winner, or a team that got to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and came up short each and every time. I am going to go with the Bills on this one. I think it's Josh Allen's year to win the MVP. I think that it's the Bills' year to win the Super Bowl. It's going to be a fantastic ride though throughout the entire NFL season. That's to be sure. I mean, we just talked about how difficult some of these divisions are to pick, and of course, every single year there is at least one or two teams that really surprise everybody. As far as didn't see them coming through the ranks.
And also
to
chokes
just make
too.
some noise.
Both ways.
That too. Teams that fall short. I mean, this could be a season where, like, could this be the season where Tom Brady falls off a cliff as far as his production goes? Who knows?
Unlikely.
Like, there's so much. There's
Peyton
so
Manning
much
did.
to keep an eye
Peyton
on.
Manning did fall off pretty fast.
Sure.
Which is crazy. But if someone's defined the odds, it's Brady.
Absolutely.
Real quick before we wrap up, I want to say this, Tom.
Yep.
Obviously, the game is not played on paper, and I love paper and stats, etc. On paper, I think there's so many teams that are so close. I don't think there's one team that stands out above anyone else. But if I had to pick on paper, the best team in the NFL, it is the Buffalo Bills on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But in a big playoff game, I simply trust the Chiefs more. But I will say this: if the Bills beat the Chiefs in that Super Bowl, I would probably pick the Bills as well. One thing to think about, we've talked about this ad nauseum, though. Regular season games and playoff games are a little bit different. The Bills' running game is still not quite there. That's the one thing that could keep them out of it. Josh Allen's such a big part of the running game, but they don't necessarily have great running backs. I'm not saying the Chiefs' running game is out of this world, but the offensive line is pretty good. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, when healthy, has been pretty good. Like, he was pretty solid as a rookie player. Like, the Chiefs don't need him to be Jim Brown. They already have Patrick Mahomes in that passing offense. But I think that the Chiefs' offense in a playoff setting is a little bit more even, I would say, on both sides of the ball. One thing to think about. I do think the Bills' defense is definitely better than the Chiefs' defense. But like I said, matchups-wise, they seem to not be able to stop Kansas City, matchups-wise. Just like the 49ers do good against the Rams, the Saints do good against the Bucks. Sometimes the matchups matter individually. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs for that reason. But if the Bills get out of the AFC, I will not only pick the Bills, I will also cheer for the Bills. I don't care if they beat the Chiefs, because I think Buffalo's fan base is amazing. They deserve a title. Josh Allen is an awesome guy. Buffalo Bills would be my second most likely team to win the Super Bowl. I just don't have them in there because they're in the AFC.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps it up for our show this week. We're going to be back next week with a ton of great content. Obviously, NFL Week 1, we're going to be picking a couple of key matchups there.
Bills and Rams, right off the bat.
Locks of the Week is going to be back. And then we'll also be talking a little bit of college football, because Week 1 is coming up. Obviously, with the NFL, we have a really jam-packed show. And typically, there's some big matchups in Week 1. So instead of previewing, say, Ohio State, Notre Dame, we're going to be recapping a couple of teams
Buckeyes
that have their
win.
eye on that college football playoff, but certainly going to be a lot to pack in to our new show format next week. So definitely looking forward to it.
All right, Tom, thanks again for a great show. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers. We will see you next week. One last note before we go. We haven't mentioned it this show. We got our fantasy football draft tonight, Tom. You beat me last year. I got to say, you are going down this year. Fantasy football draft tonight. Maybe we'll get a quick recap in that next week as well. So cannot wait for that.
And all challengers.
All right.
In this absolutely stacked league. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, Tom, thanks again. We'll see you next week.